All right, everyone. Within the legacy media, there's TDS and then there's TDS on steroids. Now we're seeing TDS on level red. A link in the description, archived, of course. This comes from Time, of course. And I'm going to read one of these sections out verbatim. You'll be astonished at how much TDS they managed to cram into such a small area. Yes, supposedly, Trump is basically, again, a combination of Satan, Hitler, and somebody whose IQ is around 30. That's the opinion of the legacy media. He's dumb and evil and, meanders around just constantly thinking of ways that he can screw things up. Of course, during his presidency, we didn't start any new wars. We got broad sweeping tax relief and the border was relatively secure, but just ignore all of that. Oh, and inflation was under control, but ignore all of that. He's trying to be a dictator, basically. He's just a dumb dictator, but also cunning and evil at the same time. The juxtaposition here with regards to TDS talking points is not always entirely linear and coherent. Sort of like listening to a Kamala Harris speech, actually. Let me read this verbatim. What emerged in 2 interviews with Trump and conversations with more than a dozen of his closest advisors and confidants, people who mainly don't like him anymore, I'm sure, were the outlines of an imperial presidency. We've heard that term before. It was used with George W. That would reshape America and its role in the world. To carry out a deportation operation designed to remove more than 11 million people from the country, Trump told me, he would be willing to build migrant detention camps and deploy the U.S. military both at the border and inland. I'm beginning to think that unfortunately that might actually be necessary. Originally, let me weigh in as I go along through this. I said years ago, I wouldn't countenance such a thing. Of course, it would necessitate potentially the violation of the Fourth Amendment. You'd end up with basically like an underground railroad sort of system. Can I think of any other pragmatic policy that would actually take care of the existing problem while we attempt to defend the border? I'm not so sure that we can. I don't know any other methodology by which maybe that would be possible. Some of these people are actual refugees fleeing from communism and its effects and things like that, and could be among the most loyal and patriotic Americans. So it's a real weird situation. It has me conflicted. Pragmatism v. ideology. I don't know, although I don't think that the courts would allow him to deport a single person anyway at this point. They wouldn't even allow him to sign an executive order to end the DREAM Act, even though that was established just by executive power as well, so I don't know. He would let red states monitor women's pregnancies and prosecute those who violate abortion bans. False, actually. That's not actually something that Donald Trump has proposed. He believes in states' rights. If a state decides to do such a thing, they'll end up injuncted by a court anyway. We're already seeing that happen. He has not come out in favor of an abortion ban. He's come out in favor of its legality under state law. He's proposed, I think, a 14-week cutoff, which is in line with Europe, actually. He would, at his personal discretion, withhold funds appropriated by Congress, according to top advisors. What's wrong with that? Withholding funds in order to influence states has been something the federal government has done for a long time anyway. Oh, but it's Trump doing it. So then it's different, right? If Biden decides to withhold funding from a state, I'm sure we wouldn't be seeing a Time article stinking about it. He would be willing to fire a U.S. attorney who doesn't carry out his order to prosecute someone breaking with a tradition of independent law enforcement that dates from America's founding, one that has been completely lambasted by the Biden administration, both with the persecution of Trump. That breaks a 300-year-old tradition, by the way, as well. And you've seen the confluence of the Biden admin and the FBI and other groups to persecute people, not just Trump, but others associated with him, content creators, media groups, etc. It's already being done. Always blame your enemy for what you yourself are doing. This is a Saul Alinsky-style article. He is weighing pardons for every one of his supporters accused of attacking the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, more than 800 of whom have pleaded guilty or been convicted by a jury. Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to be locked up in the gulag for years and years and years without trial, or I can simply say, okay, I done goofed, orange man bad, and go back to my family, not everyone is at the leisure of abandoning their family to stick it out in prison for an extended period of time over, in many cases, minor and non-violent charges. I agree with pardoning the J6ers by and large, unless they were found guilty of something terroristic, unless there was a meaningful crime, I'd pardon them too. He might not come to the aid of an attacked ally in Europe or Asia if he felt the country wasn't paying enough for its own defense. A non-issue, because these countries have already begun ponying up the requisite amount that they agreed to pay in the first place. So it's a nothing burger. He would gut the U.S. civil service. Good. Deploy the National Guard to American cities as he sees fit. That's literally happening now with some of the rioting we're seeing going on. Close the White House Pandemic Preparedness Office. Good. Because as the CDC, WHO, and others have already pointed out, there's no longer any pandemic, so you don't necessarily need that office. And staff his administration with acolytes who back his false assertion that the 2020 election was stolen. Who gives a damn? And you can go on. If you want to go through the entire tedious article here and read it, I mean, you can if you want to. Just a great example of core TDS. Again, minor TDS is like, just, hey, I don't like this thing that Trump did, and sometimes it's not something that he even did. And we see people who are like, yeah, Orange Man may not be evil, but I have a problem with him. Then you have advanced TDS. In its advanced form, TDS is Trump can do no right. He can do something that liberals generally would applaud, and like the First Steps Act, the Right to Try Act, the Abraham Accords, things that even the liberal commentators didn't criticize him on, but they just are unwilling to give him credit for anything that he does right. Like some people still believe his tax cuts mainly gave wealth to the wealthy. They ignore the part where people in the core middle class saved significant amounts on taxes. By the way, Biden wants to let those tax cuts completely expire. Well, thank you, Joe. You're cutting the child tax credit in half. You're getting rid of the self-employment offset deduction, raising business taxes during effectively stagflation. That's going to grow really well for the economy. If Joe Biden is reelected, you can look forward to a major recession, by the way. If you reelect Donald Trump, you can look forward to eventually the stabilization of the U.S. economy. It'll take a while. Give him a little bit of time. Expecting him to do everything in his first year ain't gonna fly. There were people that expected him to do everything that he said he wanted to do in his first term, in his first year. And then they got TDS too. Usually minor TDS, thankfully. They're like, well, Donald isn't moving fast enough, because they know nothing about the way government works. So they expect Donald Trump can literally do whatever he wants with total impunity. In its latent, most advanced stage, we see shit like this. Donald Trump will destroy it's like a Krugman thing. Trump will usher in a depression, start World War III, and is both evil and cunning and retarded at the same time. Well, I mean, these things are incommensurate with one another, generally speaking. You're either very shrewd and calculating, or you're rather dumb. They don't tend to coexist together too well. You look at the political cartoons about Trump. I mean, it's straight up World War II or Korean War style propaganda. Advanced TDS, probably the biggest hyperbole that I've seen in a single paragraph ever written down about Donald. That's about all. Peace out.